Well, my name is Becky, and I am thrilled to be here today with you. I've been here for 2.5 years, and I am so grateful for this church. It is my heart. It is just reinvigorated my heart for what it means to serve Jesus. So thankful for each and every one of you. I am the pastor that oversees all the counseling that happens here at Fellowship. I have the privilege of walking with families through challenging moments, hopeful moments. I'm so thankful to have shared those with you. As you may have heard before, I'm the proud mother of 4 sons that I love so much, and I talk about them all the time because they're not at home anymore. They've been replaced by a huge lab that is more annoying than they were at times. But because I don't get to talk to them all the time, I'm going to just talk about them. I have 4 sons. My oldest is 28, and he's getting married this year. And then I have triplets that are almost 23 this week. In fact, they have a birthday on Friday. When they have a birthday, I feel like I have a birthday because I carry those guys around, all 3 of them at the same time. So I celebrate when they celebrate. And I expect presents from them. Just kidding. So I have one of my oldest of my triplets is getting married also this year. They're getting married together within 5 weeks of each other. So I went to a bridal shower for my new daughter yesterday, and I think I only mentioned 5 times how excited I am about grandkids. So I felt pretty good about that. Every time they break a bow, it's like another grandkid. And she broke one bow 3 ways, and I was like, triplets? What? Her face turned white. I said, I don't think that gene is carrying on for you, thankfully. So one of my triplets, Cameron, is this incredible gift from God, who though he's 23, handsome, broad-shouldered young man, he will always be 2 in his mind. He's severely autistic and mentally disabled, so no measurable IQ, very much nonverbal, but incredible gift from God. I have learned the majority of what I know about God through raising my son, Cameron. And I'll tell you, we go on a date once a week, and at the end of every date, we go to a gas station that has a store attached to it. Doesn't matter which one, because they all carry the same thing, which is peach rings. Any peach rings fans in here? Peach rings are the best. Most of these stores carry the double pack of peach rings. You get 2 packs for $1.50, and that's what Cameron usually goes for every single time he goes into that store. But recently, he kind of went down another aisle, and he saw those donuts. Any small donut fans here, the Hostess donut fans? Oh my goodness. Cameron doesn't like Hostess because he does know the difference in size between the Hostess brand, which gives you like 5 donuts, and the generic brand, which gives you 10. And Cameron's a big green package, generic brand donut eater, and his newest one is berry donuts. They're like strawberry. The first time he picked him up, I go, Cameron, you don't want those. And he was certain he did. So every single week now that he's discovered these strawberry generic powdered donuts, he has a dilemma when he walks in the store. And there's not a week that goes by where he doesn't go get his 2 packages of peach rings and then wander over to the aisle with the donuts and pick them both up and look at me. And I said, no, Cameron, you've got to choose. So hard every week. But it's important because you know what? You don't get the peach rings if you want the donuts. And Cameron has learned the consequences of choice. But you know what Cameron has never learned, and he never will, is the currency that purchases those donuts or peach rings. If you give Cameron a card with a $100 bill in it, which he'll probably get from one of his rich aunts this Friday, he will look at the card, maybe, if it's interesting, the money will fall to the ground, and he would, if he could, throw it away with the envelope. That's how little money means to him. His brothers, on the other hand, would like to pick his $100 up and make sure they pocket it along with theirs. But Cameron has zero understanding of what it costs. So when he puts those peach rings or donuts in his Sprite soda, because we learned long ago he doesn't get the red soda because that'll keep him up all night, and I wouldn't do that to the group home. However, I will do it on a regular basis with those 5 grandkids that I'm going to have because she broke all those bows. But Cameron has no idea that the card I slip in there means magically something disappears from my bank account. He has no idea that I work for that money, but he has no idea also that if he tried to walk out of that store without me slipping that card through, that they would stop him. He would not enjoy his treat that night. He doesn't understand that there's a cost involved. And friends, as much as I think I've matured above my son who thinks at a 2-year-old level, when it comes to redemption, when it comes to what God did for me, I do not understand the cost. No more than my son understands that you're going to run a card through that slot. I have no idea what the blood cost. I have no idea. But that's redemption. God did something for us we could not do for ourselves. That's as simple and clear as I taught my children. There is a problem you cannot solve. God did something about it. He sent his son to die for you. You know that. You've heard that. But what you forget and what I forget all the time is that I have a part in redemption. I have a part to play. I'm not passive. I have a response. When I grew up in the 70s, it was all about this free gift of salvation. We used to wear these buttons, some of the older multi-generational remember these buttons called I Found It. Any of you remember those I Found It buttons? And they would ask us at the bus stop, what did you find? And I go, I wasn't prepared to answer that question when I put this button on this morning. But eventually got to this, it's a free gift and it's great, but it's not free. It is not free. It was not free for Christ. It is not free for me. Because redemption requires that I die to myself and I take up a cross and follow him. It leads to heaven, a route I could never take, but I still don't get my life. I still don't get it back, which means I don't get my rights back. Even the most basic ones that I believe I should have. The moment my rights fight with redemption, I have to remember my rights died with me. I laid them at the cross. I'm redeemed, which means I follow Christ. It's a free gift, but it's a cost. Just like my son cannot walk out of that store, I cannot get there without him paying it. But I have to recognize it takes determination, it takes a dependence on him, and most of all, I need to die to myself. In order to see how to do this, it's not easy, friends. It is not easy. Well, we're going to look at an ancient story called Ruth. It's in your Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, then Joshua, Judges, Ruth. When I learned those Bible books when I was young, I just remember thinking, why does Joshua judge Ruth? What does she ever do? But I could cruise through those, and I always remember, poor Ruth. Always getting judged. When I got a little bit older and actually read the books of the Bible, I realized what was going on and how Ruth fits next to Judges, and she's not being judged by great Joshua's not, wasn't even a judge, wasn't even a ruler. He is not a judge of Ruth. But the times of the Judges was critical when you set up the story of Ruth, because the times of the Judges was between when Israel came into the land and when they got a king. And it literally says in the times of the Judges that everyone did what they saw fit because there was no king in Israel. So that's the point in which we pick up the story of Ruth. The story of Ruth, unlike the story of Judges, which could be made into a movie that would be rated R for violence, the story of Ruth could be rated G and be on Hallmark. Any Hallmark fans in here? Oh man, Hallmark Christmas movies. Oh my goodness, they're so good. This is a Hallmark movie. There's sadness at the beginning. There's a great looking guy that's kind of George Clooney-ish age. And then there's this wonderful ending, of course, because that's how every Hallmark movie is. And so I wanted to pick up the story, though, at the very beginning. There's a famine in Israel in this little town called Bethlehem before it was made famous. So in Bethlehem, there was a famine. There was a husband and wife that lived there, Elimelech and Naomi, and they had 2 sons. And they lived there in this famine, and Elimelech decided the famine is too severe. He decides to go to another country to take his family and raise his sons because it looked green and it looked hopeful. But once they got there, Elimelech died, the 2 sons got married, and then within 10 years, they both died. And that's the first 5 verses of Ruth. That's when there's a commercial break. And then you take a breath, and then you move on, because from then on, it gets amazing. So Naomi lives in this town with two women. She used to ask the traders all the time as they came through, is the famine over in Bethlehem? They say, no, it's still going. So she waited 10 years until she heard someone say, the famine is over, you can go back. So she and the girls pack up all they own. They go outside the town. They're looking downhill at the town, and she begins to realize, I shouldn't be taking these girls. They should go back home. This is ridiculous. They shouldn't go with me. So she picks up in verse 8, chapter 1. Then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go back to your parents' house. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant you each to find the home of another husband. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, We will go back with you to your people. But Naomi said, Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons? Who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was a hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight, would you remain unmarried until I had sons? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. At this they wept aloud, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, Do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you from me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging. So there's this scene where they are outside of Moab, and this very disappointed, depressed, bitter old woman is sending them away. She says, This is my lot in life. You have a chance still. In the midst of grieving, Orpah said goodbye to her, and she heads back. And here's Naomi with Ruth saying, Go. Look she's gone to her family. She's gone to her gods. And in that moment, Ruth had a choice. She was determined to go. She saw everything here that she knew, the city, her parents, the family, potentially anybody she could marry. And she saw this road over here with an angry, tired, depressed woman who didn't even seem to want her there. And she had no idea, but she believed, and everything in her believed, that there was a God here that was worth following with blind faith. She had no idea that she would have a home there. She had no idea George Clooney-ish guy was waiting for her. She had no idea she would have security and she would have wealth. She would have a child who would be the grandfather of the greatest king of Israel. She had no idea that her great-great-great-great-great-grandson would be Jesus Christ. This side of that decision, she had no idea. She looked at the peach rings, said, No, it's all about that strawberry donut. She made an impossible decision. And we all know what she said. We've heard that before. Where you go, I'll go. But what about the decision? What about the choice to go somewhere she'd never experienced? Friends, are you being called? That's what this whole series is about. God calls us to leave what is familiar, what we know, because he has something for us we could never imagine. Paul says it is greater than you could dream or imagine to follow God's love and his plan that he has prepared for you long ago. What do you need to say no to say yes to this future? I sit with couples all the time struggling in an early marriage, and I say to them, I know you only have these 2 years together. You don't have children. You don't even own a house, but you're forgetting this is to come. You have no idea what God has in store for you. Make the hard choice to fight for God to redeem your marriage because he has this blessing for you. I have young people who come and talk to me and they're struggling with the call God has for them to do something hard. They want to do something they understand, but there is something beyond that God says, don't miss it. Ruth said incredibly courageous words, but God had a bigger story for her than she could have ever imagined. So she went back with Naomi. She walked this long road back. They came in. The barley would have been like shoulder high as they walked in. And I'm sure Naomi was saying, why now? After 10 years, why now do you bless this harvest? Where were you when my boys were here, when my husband was still alive? She walks in so angry that she tells all of her friends that come to meet her, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because I'm bitter because of what I've lost. They walk in, but Naomi remembered the law. She remembered truth. And truth, we are told in Psalm 40, protects us. It protected them because she remembered that the law said that the margins of everyone's field would be left open for the poor, for the widows and orphans. Not only that, but when they came through the crop and harvested it, whatever dropped, they were told not to go back through their crop because there would be people following behind, reaping anything that was left. So she tells Ruth to put on her best jewelry and really cool dresses and a lot of makeup. At least that's what it looked like when I looked at the Bible story pictures of Ruth. She looked like she was dressed up great and did yard work. That's what I thought when I was a kid. All the while being judged by Joshua. So she goes to this field, but it wasn't just any field. This field belonged to Boaz, who was a gracefully aging man, as we know. But not only was he looking like George Clooney, he had another very important trait. He was a near relative of hers, which part of the law was that he would be potentially someone who could marry her. But beyond that, so much more important for this foreign woman who came to this land was who Boaz's mother was. Boaz's mother was Rahab. Rahab was the prostitute who hung down her scarf so that she could protect the spies when the nation of Israel came through Jericho and the walls fell down. Rahab came into Israel and she had a son named Boaz. He became a wealthy landowner and his field was the one Ruth harvested. A man who could uniquely appreciate the journey of a foreign woman into Israel. So he appreciated her. He saw her, of course, because she had so much jewelry on and makeup. And he's like, wow, you're doing yard work, but you look wonderful. I'm going to protect you and keep you safe, because he cared about her. It was super sweet. And in the midst of all of that, she goes through the harvest, always having enough food. But the harvest is over. She comes home to Naomi, but Naomi continues like a fairy godmother to encourage her. And she says, well, now is a time where they have this huge party on the threshing floor where all the guys harvest all the barley. They get a really big meal. They drink a lot of beverages that are for adults only, and then they go and lay down. She said, you're going to go and put all that makeup on, jewelry and all. You're going to go find Boaz on the threshing floor, and you're going to lay down at his feet. And it wasn't anything weird or sexual at all. It was her saying in that Near East tradition that if you cover yourself with that blanket, you're asking that person to cover you. You're asking that person to cover you resource-wise into his family, and she was asking that of Boaz. So when he wakes up, he sees her there, because at that moment, she would cover herself. There would be a commercial break, because it's like building for this moment, right? So he sees her there, and this is what he says, "The Lord bless you, chapter 3, my daughter." He replied, "This kind of goodness is greater than that which you have showed earlier. You have not run with the younger men, whether they are rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. All the people of this town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true I am a guardian redeemer, there is another who is more closely related to you than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do it, it is his duty. As your guardian redeemer, good, let him. But if he is unwilling, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Now stay here till morning." This is an incredible picture. This is the time of the judges. It is dark, it is chaotic, and it would not be safe for this woman to walk back on her own. Boaz tells her, "I will take care of all you need me to do tomorrow, but stay here till morning. Be safe." Friends, when my life and with your life is filled to overflowing with challenges that we cannot solve, when we need to depend on God, we need to take those challenges like a trash bag full of junk and place it at his feet. And then we need to stay there till morning. When your life is dark, you lug that stuff to God, Don't walk away. You need to rest there. Because if you walk away, chances are you're bringing that stuff with you. You need to lay it at his feet, and you need to recognize there are dark seasons of life. And those dark seasons need to be spent at his feet, where he says, I will take care of this, but rest. Are you in a dark season? Have you taken something to God and then drug it away as soon as you said amen? What would it look like for you to stay till morning? To not pick it up and solve it or control it. To say, God, do it, and I will wait here while you do. I will wait on you in a place that is safe. Boaz does that. He goes the next day, he has this transaction at the city gate. He, of course, paints this woman as being, unattractive. You could have this property, but the girl, yikes. Just kidding. That's a little bit of, liberties with the passage. It's what I imagine, though. And so he marries her. Boaz took Ruth, chapter 4. She became his wife, and he made love to her, and God enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day did not leave you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Those same friends that Naomi was complaining to as she walked back into Israel, and she said, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because my life is bitter." Those same women come up to her later and say, "Wow, Naomi, you didn't get the guy, but you got redeemed. What you have is better." She's this daughter-in-law who made this determined choice to come with you, who depended on God for her salvation, has provided you with something better. You know what doesn't turn up in chapter 4? Her sons or her husband. They don't come back to life. Because what you lose, you lay down. It doesn't come back. We don't get it back. We get something better. I don't know about you, that makes me catch my breath. Same thing happened with Job. He spends 40 chapters in that book losing everything he has. And that at the end, God says the latter part of Job's life was better than the beginning. His kids didn't come back either. All he lost didn't come back. What he got was better. I don't know about you, but boy, defining better like God does is really hard. It's really hard. What are you asking for today back? So much so that you've forgotten to see what is better. What did you and I forget we no longer had the right to because we laid it down when we took the cross up? And we get something better, far better. He did what only he could do for us, but there is a part we play. We play it with determination. We play it with dependence, and most of all, we play it when we die to ourselves. Take up that cross and follow him. I learned this the most one night about 12 years ago. My son Cameron had been violent his whole life, but by the time he reached 10, 12 years old, it was acutely violent, and he was placed in a group home by CPS. Because of the system in the group home, we weren't allowed to see him at all for 30 days. And the first night I went to see him, I brought his favorite food in, and I sat down beside him when I walked in, and he looked at me and he said, "Fries?" And I said, "No, Cameron, I brought you dinner." And we spent the whole night together in silence, like we always did. He was heavy. His heart was sad. We watched the movie together, and then I put him to bed that night, and I got down on my knees and prayed for him like I have all of my sons every night of their life. And I said amen. And then I choked on the next words because they always were, "See you in the morning." But I wouldn't. I sat there for so long with this battle. You've had that battle too. I remember that week, I was getting ready to teach Hebrews to our women's Bible study, that part of Hebrews where it said, Abraham offered his son Isaac as an act of worship. And I recognized what it meant to die to yourself. Cameron didn't die that night. He has never been healthier than he is today. His brothers didn't die. They have opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. I didn't die, although I was close to it. I was in and out of the hospital before Cameron got placed all the time. God had a future for me that was better, but that night needed to happen. I needed to die to myself. I needed to die to the right to raise my son and say good morning to him every day of his life. None of us get that, but when you have a 2-year-old that's going to be 2 forever, you kind of assume that. And as I was on my knees that night praying, the truth was, I had no idea the currency that it cost me to die to myself. I had no idea what it cost for God to say, you have something better, Becky, look at it. We just celebrated it a minute ago. The blood that gave us strength from day to day will not lose its power. And I'll promise you, every single time I take Cameron back, after he makes his choice of peach rings or donuts, I'll get him to the group home. But I promise you, every single evening I have him, there's a moment in time where we have this interaction that's so great, and I think to my mind, Becky, maybe he could come home. But I remember that was sacrificed. God asked for it, and it died. What is he asking for in your life today? What do you need to lay down for him? What choice do you need to make with determination for the next step? What do you need to depend on him for today? And what do you need to lay down? Because long ago, I did it almost 50 years ago when I knelt beside at my grandfather's parsonage to ask Jesus in my heart. I had no idea what I was really saying, but I have learned. What I was saying was, I lay my life down and I take your perfect life in exchange. And I'm going to follow you wherever that goes, and I'm going to make a mess of it all the time. But I'm going to have a blast doing it. And I'm going to spend my life learning to define what you say to me as better. God, I thank you for the stunning truth that makes us take our breath away to know that you have the right, God, not to mess with our lives, but to be sovereign over them. God, you are our provider, and you provide opportunities for us to, with determination, make choices that lead us down a road we could not ask for or imagine. Sometimes we just plain don't ask for it. God, I thank you that we get to leave our burdens at your feet and then stay till it's light. God, most of all, I thank you that what I lose, I don't get back. I get something better. God, I don't get peach rings and donuts. I have to choose. But what I get is so much better. God, I pray that we sit with the reality as we worship you now and say you're our provider, that you're able, that you're good, and that you're with us. That we know that even if you gave us nothing back, that would be enough. We worship you, Father, in your name. Amen.